Henry and Squirrel's nuts. Grumbling was all he could hear, an impatient mix of complaint and protest. It was Squirrel, livid that the stores of nuts she had been carefully hiding across the forest floor had been raided. It was autumn, and the forest was ablaze with colour. Henry was curious. He liked nothing better than putting his detective hat on to solve a crime. On the other hand, Squirrel was a tetchy soul who didn't like busybodies. Henry kept his distance and decided to investigate, but out of sight. He waited for Squirrel to grow bored of all her anger and leap away at lightning speed. It suddenly seemed very quiet. Until Henry was startled by an alarming noise, a crunching and munching that frightened Henry with its intensity. He burrowed under some leaves for protection and peeped out. Fox was prowling, lunching on some bones and digging for more. Ah, thought Henry, caught in the act. Fox is the thief. But before the thought had even fully settled in Henry's head, the fox was bounding off, and another sound pressed him further under the leaves. This time it was a scraping, gnawing sound that seemed to echo round the glade. Beaver, having gnawed at the bark of a willow tree, was busy pawing at the ground in search of roots and mushrooms. Ah, thought Henry, caught in the act. Beaver is the thief. But before the solution had even sat down in Henry's mind, Beaver was off in search of further delights, and another sound froze Henry in terror. It was a screeching, cackling sound so spine-tingling that it even made Henry close his eyes. Summoning the courage to open one, he saw Crow proudly strutting across the ground, prodding for worms. Ah, thought Henry, caught in the act. Crow is the thief. But before the brainwave had taken pride of place in his mind, Crow had flown high, carrying Henry's quick assumptions with him. The glade was quiet again. Henry decided, now well camouflaged under a pile of leaves and roots, to stake out the area and wait for the nut thief to appear. The morning's sun gave way to the afternoon's cloud, which in turn bowed gracefully to the evening's chill. Nothing had taken place, other than Henry snoring occasionally with the strain of his investigation. Then, just when he was about to leave, a noise surprised him. It was Squirrel. She had wandered into the glade and was busy chatting away to the stars. "Well, it's all rather worrying," Squirrel muttered. "It's morning, and it should be light, but it's dark. It should be getting warmer, but it's growing colder. Everything seems topsy-turvy all of a sudden. What is going on?" Suddenly, Henry had solved the crime. Well, actually, there wasn't a crime at all. Squirrel, who by this time was rather elderly, was becoming rather confused. On the one hand, he chuckled to himself. Squirrels were renowned for forgetting where they had buried their stashes of nuts. And on the other, the aged squirrel had become lately more and more confused. Her nuts were probably still there. Henry decided that after a good night's sleep he would return to the glade where and when the dew was still glistening, and find where Squirrel had buried her treasure, so that he could lead her to it kindly when she arrived, all confused and in a bother. As sunbeams warmed the cool earth, and fluffy moisture clouds lingered close to the ground, Henry was already busy about his search. He set about the task with great enthusiasm, spurred on by the pleasure that was going to spread across Squirrel's face when he led her to her nuts. So deeply was he focused on his search, and so convinced that he had found the correct spot, that he was entirely unaware of the leaves rustling and the pairs of eyes glued on his every action. Just when his nose cleared the first buried nut of Squirrel's stash, and a thrill tingled down every one of his prickly spines at his discovery, a whistle pierced the air, followed by a great commotion. Squirrel darted from behind the trees, followed by Inspector Owl. I told you, Inspector, the squirrel said excitedly. I saw Henry yesterday, lurking in the bushes, waiting for me to go. He's the one who has been stealing my nuts. You must arrest him. Henry sighed, a big, deep, frustrated sigh. Oh dear, what a muddle life is at times, where things get all confused, back to front and upside down. And he wondered to himself how he could explain this tumbled mess of confusion in such a way that Inspector Owl would understand, while being careful not to embarrass poor elderly Squirrel.